The coastal hamlet of Stansbury on South Australia's Yorke Peninsula is a haven for fishing, crabbing and growing oysters. It's where Steve and Jerry Bowley have built a business and a life.
Beautiful one day and beautiful the next.
Yep, that's it.
Their 10 hectares of oyster lease and around 1.5 million oysters sit in the aptly named Oyster Bay, usually known for its pristine water. Nearing retirement, the couple was on the verge of selling the business in March. Just as a widespread harmful algal bloom, Coorong mikimotoi, appeared along parts of South Australia's coastline. The highly toxic microalgae turned the sea into a murky, foamy soup, killed thousands of marine creatures, damaging their gills and starving them of oxygen, and left surfers with sore eyes and breathing difficulties. Then, for the first time in Australia, brevetoxins were detected in oyster samples, which oysters can metabolise, but which can cause neurotoxic shellfish poisoning in humans and make them very sick. As a precaution, the Primary Industries Department closed oyster farms in Stansbury, at nearby Port Vincent and American River off Kangaroo Island.
We haven't sold an oyster for many, many weeks now, so we've had absolutely no income. It's tens of thousands of dollars now, and it will go, the longer it goes on, yeah, tens of thousands.
Half their business is from tourism, farm gate and market sales, and to supplying restaurants and wholesalers. The other is growing juvenile oysters, which are trucked to the Eyre Peninsula to grow into Coffin Bay oysters. 95% of the state's harvesting areas are still open and their oysters are safe to eat. But for the Bowleys and a handful of other growers, everything is on hold.
Look at that one.
That's a nice one.
But there's still grading work to do.
But Chingos, there's nothing wrong with that, yeah?
It's fat. Full and fat. Look at that.
I should be growing oysters. They're great. So far, the bloom hasn't affected them.
Things look good now, but Steve's worried about his future and that of the state's $60 million oyster industry.
My real concern is what's the recovery going to look like in the next 12 months? Are we ever going to be able to sell our oysters again? This toxin is a neurotoxin, so it affects the interaction with the marine environment with the animal, and we don't know whether that's going to have a long-term impact or not.
They're waiting for tests to clear their oyster meat. But until brevetoxin in the shellfish samples are below the Australian-New Zealand food standards levels for 2 consecutive weeks and water samples show a drop in Coorong, they remain in limbo.
I don't see an end in sight to this, and I don't know what that's going to do financially for us. You know, selling this business, we might be better just to close it down and walk away.
At nearby Port Vincent, the scale of the disaster has unfurled along a coastline Lockie Cameron has known all his life.
You've done a lot of documenting in recent months with the algal bloom. What have you been seeing?
Death on nearly every beach we go to. So I've seen thousands now of fiddler rays and Port Jackson sharks, hundreds of weedy sea dragons, and countless other fish species, invertebrate species. The whole food chain is being affected.
What's that been like for you to watch?
Yeah, it's been heartbreaking.
It's citizen scientists like Lockie who've collected the data on the impact of the bloom. They've gathered thousands of reports, photos and videos since surfers reported a mysterious foam in March at Waipinga Beach, south of Adelaide.
That one there's a leather jacket, just suffocating in sea foam.
Oh yeah, this is heartbreaking.
We found a couple of wobbegongs from the size of my hand all the way up to, 4 foot.
Yeah, right.
4 foot shot.
Months on, the death and decay along this beach remains. But Lockie Cameron fears for what we can't see, the ecosystem under the water.
Yeah, I'm concerned. If it goes on much longer, I don't have a whole lot of hope for a fast recovery. And I think we've only just seen the start of the damage that it's caused.
Recreational fishing and tourism have also dried up, and local businesses are eerily quiet. Not just on York Peninsula, but at fishing hotspots across the state.
South Australia has a $380 million recreational fishing tourism industry, and people are cancelling their trips and they don't want to come here. So that's a real concern for those regional towns that rely on that travel.
Asher Desiree is not just worried about fishing tourism, but the algae's long-term effect on fish stocks.
We're really worried about what effect this has on juvenile fish stocks of those important Tier 1 stock species such as calamari, snapper and whiting. And we want to know how this is going to affect next year and the year after.
It's not just oyster growers and anglers holding their breath. After a mass wash-up of dead pippies at the popular holiday spot Goolwa Beach, a 10-kilometre stretch of water was closed to commercial harvesting in April.
I'd have to say that was probably one of the tougher moments we've had during my time in the fishery, where Darren and I walked down on the beach and we literally started coughing and sneezing and our eyes were itching, and we saw the die-off that had occurred. It was very, very confronting.
Tom Robinson says it's no doubt a tough time for commercial fishers. Goolwa Pipico has increased its water and pipi meat testing as a precaution. But the fishery can still harvest outside of the closure zone, and for them, it's business as usual.
Oh, wow. So freshly caught this morning?
Very much so. They are so fresh. Opening up the pipi, you'll see, incredibly healthy. We are currently fishing probably the strongest biomass that we've fished in the last 20 years.
The catch is healthy, but he says bad news surrounding the bloom has hit the business and those that rely on it.
We know seafood's expensive and people are, watching what they spend. So on top of what was already a pretty tough year for all seafood producers, this algal bloom has certainly knocked some confidence around.
Though he's confident that will pick up.
The good news about this pipi fishery at the moment is our catches are extremely strong, and we would like to just let people know that, yes, we've had an algal bloom, but our product is completely safe to eat.
Caused by a marine heat wave, calm seas and a lack of wind, it was hoped storms would break up the devastating bloom. And while the wild weather dispersed some of the algae in some locations, it also pushed it into other areas, including the internationally significant wetland of the Coorong.
How's the water?
Here's a sample for you. No, it's not looking good.
Yeah.
Tell us what's in that.
On the banks of the North Lagoon, estuarine ecologist Faith Coleman is collecting a water sample from commercial fisher Glen Hill.
Okay.
Excellent, I'll get this tested.
Right, thanks. See ya.
In the absence of what many feel has been a lack of information from authorities, Faith has spent hours volunteering to help the community understand the bloom. But realising it had reached the Coorong rocked her.
I had somewhere inside of me hoped that the Coorong would escape that. The problem was it wasn't just that species. What I was seeing down the microscope is the conditions were perfectly right, and we could now see 5 or 6 other species.
What does it mean for the Coorong?
Well, the Coorong is a nursery more than anything else, and it is a very fragile nursery. And so here the Coorong is killing off the benthic life, and so it's all of the things that live in the sediments, the little worms, the little fish, the shells, the cockles, the snails, and those things feed the shorebirds that come here every year. They feed the fish that come in that the fishermen catch. They feed some of the waterfowl as well, and the ibises. This is a food web, and it's attacking that very fundamental part of it.
Glen Hill's love for the Coorong goes deep.
See these birds over here?
Yeah.
It's where he's made a living for the past 35 years, under and on the water, through his wildlife tours and as a commercial fisherman. But when he noticed the water had a strange reddish-pink colour, he collected a sample for Faith, who identified the Coorenia Mikimotoi algae mix.
My heart sunk It just... If we lose the bottom end of the food chain, the Coorong's gone. Like straight after this blower went out, and there's just worms everywhere on the bank. And I know they don't float. They've been washed up there, and I just know that the bottom is utterly covered with dead critters everywhere.
He and other fishermen here are now documenting what they're seeing to help build a long-term picture of the problem. As we cross the lagoon to the Young Husband Peninsula, the water is brown and murky and the algae is evident.
That's a really thick concentration of that bloom.
It's really murky up.
Coorong mikimotoi craves warm temperatures and nutrient-rich environments.
Turns out that what it can do is go down to the bottom. And you remember that black mud I was talking about? That's everywhere because of years of degradation issues. Black just draws heat to it.
Yeah, right.
So now we've got this perfect place for it to go down and pull its electric blanket on and warm up.
This dead hardyhead is a food source for other fish. The black muddy algae is a sign of sickness, as is what Glenn can't find in this aquatic plant life.
This should be full of life, This sort of stuff is where all your shrimpy critters and little worms and so on will get, and there's nothing. It's not alarming, it's devastating.
He says poor management of the system has led to this point, and he's frustrated at a lack of government action.
The community with this is all on one side, and it seems that the people that are in charge are busy trying to think about all their political ramifications instead of getting on with their job.
The algal bloom has spanned more than 4,000 square kilometres across parts of York Peninsula, Fleurieu Peninsula and Kangaroo Island, and it's made its way into the fragile ecosystem of the Coorong. It's big, it's unpredictable and it's unprecedented. And so the race is on to try and understand how to manage the impact now and also plan and prepare for more blooms like this in the future. Hoping for more wind and less sun is one approach. Learning from neighbours across the ditch is another.
I think it's very surprising. The toxins that have been found are very rare. There's only a few places in the world where they've been detected before.
Including one in New Zealand that brought an industry to its knees.
We had one in the early 1990s that really devastated our aquaculture industry. The whole industry was closed for almost a year while we had developed these testing methods and identification methods in so that we could really protect human health from these toxins.
The Coorong Institute is using that expertise to test water and oyster meat samples for the South Australian Shellfish Quality Assurance Program.
What we really need to do is get many of these species into culture as possible so then we can start understanding what compounds and toxins they are producing and what those impacts may be.
Researchers are now focusing on what other species might exist in the bloom. They're also analysing brevetoxin levels in oyster samples, which need to be at safe levels before closures on the affected harvest areas are lifted. Coorong mikimotoi is one of around 200 harmful algal blooms that produce harmful toxins. Little can be done to prevent them, so close monitoring, for now, is all that remains.
Okay.
And that means an anxious wait for the likes of Steve and Jerry Bowley.
The biodiversity of the marine ecosystem is being severely compromised by this thing. We are at the cutting edge of climate change, we're at the cutting edge of sustainable aquaculture, sustainable food production, and something's going on out there, guys, and we need to know what it is.